there's someone I dated, and funny story. She was so used to doing everything on her own because the men that she dated before me or in her past, they were very reliant on her. They weren't self-sufficient men. And I know a lot of times men are looked at as the provider, the protector, and things like that. So for a lot of women that I find is that when they get men who are more so like their child versus their partner, they're doing everything, for them to up to the point where literally almost washing their ass for some of them, right? And for her, it was a little bit of a struggle because just carrying the groceries out of the store, she had to like fight the urge to do it herself, right?
Yeah, this is a very common phenomenon, and I will, cop that I've been guilty of that in the past as well. And I had to go through a whole process to kind of retrain my feminine to receive, because we are so taught as women that we need to be able to do and give and overgive and nurture and all these things. It's kind of innate in our nature. But, when you get into, a relationship where you have a feminine, masculine energies, there can only be one masculine who is, taking charge or leading in one moment. And that can switch. It's not like the man needs to be in that role all of the time. But I think the working edge for most women is to be able to lean back and, let the men lead, because that lets him be a man. I think a lot of women don't realize that it actually is a gift to him to be able to step into that role and nourish her. And then it's actually not attractive most of the time for her to be giving to him if that's really out of balance.
And I guess that leads me to two questions I would have. Why do you think the men, well, sorry, why do you think men are doing that to the women? And why do you think women are staying in relationships where that is happening?
Well, some couples are comfortable with that by choice, where you have a woman kind of taking on more of the masculine energy, and the man has more of the feminine energy. And so for some women, their need for control outweighs the need for the masculine to be strong within. And so it's kind of like an unspoken agreement. And for some people, it works. But in my opinion, sooner or later, that will lead to issues in the bedroom, because most women who are feminine in their core want that masculine to really ravish them. And so if this equation is out of balance, it does have an impact.
And that's some of the concern I find with some of my male acquaintances where they're in a position just because they can do it, they do it. And what's happening when I see the impact that it has to women is that the women will go out there and they will think what is abnormal is normal. So when they're seeking out future partners now who are in their masculine, as you mentioned, they respond in a toxic manner because now instead of embracing it, they're attacking it. And then once you start to speak to them about it, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not supposed to be that way. But my last five partners were that way. It's all I've known. And what has happened, I think, a lot of times with the women who are in this way, it's not like they've dated these people for 6 months, 3 months, whatever. It's long periods of time. So it's 3 years with one, 5 years with another, 8 years with another. So by the time they wake up and wake out of it, they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, oh my God, it's been 30 years of insanity. So how does man number six, or how does Marissa, or how does Terrain try to overcome all of that?
These are great questions. And I think that number one, there is a question of how quickly you are willing to do the work to get out of the pain you're in. Some people will stay in the misery long term and then break up and go find another partner with the exactly same pattern. It can take them a while, for them to figure it out. Some of us want to learn more quickly. And it is can be a very painful experience. And I think, to be fair, having gone through this paradigm shift myself, I was wholly and completely unaware that the masculine wants to make me happy. I had no knowledge or understanding on this until I literally sent myself to man school. It actually took that kind of, effort to really be curious and understand what was happening in my dynamic with the masculine. And so once I was given this information, then I started to see it everywhere. And then that became much more my reality. And I'm like, oh, I don't need to do everything the masculine wants to give to me. And so it's been such a gift to move through that process. But I would say the default setting for most women is that they have to do in order to be loved.
Were you surprised that you found yourself in that type of situation when you were going through it?
I was, because in my mind, I had it figured out. I thought I was being the cool girl and, adopting all of these behaviors that I had either seen in movies or had read about. And I thought I was doing it the right way, but it was definitely upside down to what the reality was if I wanted a healthy, masculine, feminine relationship, which is definitely something that I came to have a much better understanding of. But there's a responsibility on both sides, to really show up in the right way so that you can create this kind of healthy dynamic and really, gently point out to your partner where that might be falling off the rails. So it is a process. And sometimes we go on that journey on our own and then attract a healthy partner who has also done the work. Or sometimes we end up doing the work together and breaking through that power struggle to the next stage.
That first step that you described, how, I don't want to use the word scary, but how big of a first step is that first step that you described for some of these couples?
It definitely is difficult and kind of disconcerting because we live in so many of these paradigms. We live in this soup of patriarchy, and it teaches us certain ways to be, and it doesn't teach us vulnerability. It doesn't teach us intimacy, and so there is a lot of shocks to the system to have to realize that to do something to have a better relationship than our parents, we have to go outside of common consciousness. And so it really can take a while for these new mindsets to sink in. We have to read books and, you know, get great teachers and really immerse yourself. It's like anything else in life. If you want to be great at it, you have to put the chops in and practice and learn like anything else that for people who are listening that they have become an expert in, that took work. And the same thing for healthy relationship and those polarity dynamics.